Okay, I thought I should show you what they look like in the microwave. So these have been on, this is the second round for 8 minutes. Remember I told you that they go in twice and then they rest twice. This is a little bit hot, so take this off, and what I flip it over to keep the water on the top, and then I just slide it under the microwave there. Now you may have a lot more room than I do, but that's how I do it. And then I take each jar out and sit it on the counter. Now also, what I have a system, and what I do is once I take the other ones out and give them a stir, when they're ready to go back in, I just set them on top of the microwave. This way I always know what succession they're in, but you can always tell by after they've been in that second time. Whoops, sorry. They're very hot. You can't pick them up with your hands, so that always tells me that it's time for the acid to go in. So I'll take these out and put the other ones in, and then I'll work on these while the other ones are processing, and then when they're out they'll be ready to go in for their final stage. You'll see that these will pretty well be clear by the time I'm finished talking here. I think I went over it in my demo, how the dye process works. It's wet wool. The wool has to be wet thoroughly. Okay, I'm going to put the cover on this again. Hot water and dye. The hot water is the highway that the dye travels on. So if your wool isn't soaked fully through, then it's like a roadblock and that dye can't touch it. So if the dye can't touch it, then it isn't going to dye, and that's how you get the white core. So I believe that it's all in the soaking. It has to be soaked through. And also the acid, citric acid or the vinegar, whatever you want to use, is like the glue. So if the water temperature is right and the dye is happy, the wool is happy, if everything's happy, when you put the citric acid in, you're going to see that the wool takes it up right away. And that's all there is to the dye. And once the wool is taken up the dye, and it's glued, that's it. It's done. Now I know they say you have to put it in the oven to set it, but I've been checking. My wool from 7 years ago looks exactly the same as it does today. Now I think maybe the blue faded a tiny bit, but that's it. It's set. I'm positive. So with the microwave, so I take it out because I like to kind of melt the acid in there, and that's about, what am I using here? A quarter teaspoon, and it's really about an eighth that I put because you can see it's kind of all coated there. Anyway, I'll put that back in, and because I want it even, I'll stir. Now, I have ADD, so I usually count, but I won't do that to you. But see what happens. Now, right away, that water is clear. So that's pretty well ready. But whoops, I didn't turn this on. So it's ready. And it will go in for 1 minute per jar. So even though I know it's done, I'm still putting it in for that last heating just to kind of set it, as they say. So I just put a little quarter teaspoon. Whoops. I find the first for a quarter teaspoon is plenty. And the darker it is, of course, it takes more acid. So sometimes I'll have to put 2 in the darker ones. See, look. Set that back there. Okay. Then number 3. Oh, I love this color. I think you can kind of see it there. I hoping to do a better video with help, but it seems like I'm always by myself, and this is just going to have to do for now. But it gives you a really good idea how easy and fast this is. Maybe not much faster than if you're doing 8 jars, but if you're doing 1 jar, a total of 5 minutes, come on. When I first started experimenting, every morning I would get up and put a jar in, and I'm a coffee lover, and I always have coffee first thing, but I'd come down here and put a jar in to check to see if it matched, each value matched, and I was kind of beyond myself that it really was working out so good. So this is the darkest one. And there we go. And the stirring, if I wasn't wanting an even swatch, I would not really stir much, because the stirring is what kind of forces the dye to attach itself. So, okay, that's done, and now we just need to wait for the other one to come out, and then we'll rinse it. And what I'm going to do is I usually throw it back in the same bucket that I was soaking the wool in. It has a little bit of woolite, and I throw it back in there, and then I rinse it in clear water. And also a few differences in microwave dyeing and roaster dyeing. Microwave dyeing will not fog up your windows. I don't know if you've done roaster dyeing, but it's really steamy. The whole house gets steamed up, and it smells like boiling wool. It doesn't do that in the microwave. And also, citric acid doesn't smell like vinegar does, and it's so much less expensive than vinegar, even though you think vinegar is cheap. A jar this size would probably replace maybe 10 or 15 of those big what are they, gallons or liters? I guess would be gallon jugs. It's amazing how far it goes, and it's only, $10 or whatever, so really, it's much more economical. It takes a lot less space, it travels well, and it doesn't smell. And the microwave doesn't heat up your house, so there's a few of the options that we have here. So I'm going to turn this off, and this has got 4 more minutes, but really all I'm going to do here is put it in for another minute, and then we're all done.